It's time for another episode of Ask Us Anything. Bahir and Uma with you on the Goggler podcast. We're going to kick things off this week with a question from Daphne M88. It's an interesting question that I had never actually thought about. She asks, I'm always curious about the best screenplay category at the Oscars. What are the criteria for something to be considered a good screenplay? Is it the same as reading a book/manuscript? And when I say I've never really thought about it, I had never really considered what goes into the process. Now, the Academy themselves don't actually put out like a judging criteria. There's no checklist, right? For any of the categories. And so a lot of it just goes by experience and feel.
What's important to clarify is also that the best screenplay categories are voted on by members of the writers branch of the Academy. So camera people are not voting for what they think is the best screenplay. So in that sense, it's a very technical and experience derived criteria, right? So in that sense, it makes me feel a little better that these guys are voting on it because they know what they're doing.
And that's the same for most categories, in that costume design isn't voted for by directors. And same with VFX and so on and so on. All the technical categories. And that, yes, does fill me with some confidence. But I think what people are looking for is very much the same thing you're looking for when you're reading a good book or manuscript. Are the characters good? Do they evolve? Have they been drawn well? What's the dialogue like? Does it match the period or style of the movie? Does the story structure make sense? Is it original enough? And if it's an adaptation, has it done a good job in adapting the source material? It's all of these things that you would look for in any sort of creative work. But I think if you're a professional writer or a professional screenwriter, then you will have a better understanding of that. And I think a lot of us do to a certain extent, but because we've seen a lot of movies and we know what structure is and narrative is. But I think the writing process of a screenplay that we're not familiar with will also come into play if you're judging that category as a professional screenwriter. And I think that's key. Now, if you've never read a screenplay, I suggest you guys go look it up. There's plenty available online. It reads very differently from a book or a manuscript, in that it reads like one part dialogue, one part architectural blueprint. And there are all of these rules to writing a screenplay as well. Like, you don't want it to be overly ornate. And of course, different writers and different directors have different styles. So if you look at Oppenheimer, Christopher Nolan actually wrote it in the first person. I walk, I see. And that is practically unheard of in a screenplay.
It depends. Like, some screenplays have got more stage directions than others. Some stage directions can go on, and some scripts will just say insert action here.
There are sometimes, Bahir, people talk about big action movies and MCU
Yeah.
movies, and you will see a 10-minute blockbuster action sequence. It's one line in a screenplay.
It's insert action here. That works for a film that is so dependent on an action sequence to sort of make the attention of the film, right? So you don't want the writer who may not be a action guy. You don't want, maybe you do. You may or may not want like an indie art house director deciding what your big set piece action film is. But I think what's also kind of important to note is that, if I'm not mistaken, the Oscars for screenplay is based on the shooting script. So members of the branch actually get given the script. They have to read the script to decide and not just watch the movie. So I think that's interesting. That really puts the voters in the mind space of a script and not how this looks on screen. And I think that is interesting, especially for a screenplay category of films that are popular. You may not like Deliver Me From Nowhere, but that script might really work for you.
Yeah.
And I think that's interesting.
I mean, it's the same with comic books, because I think comic books are a very interesting art form in that they're a hybrid. If you look at a comic script, it's a hybrid of prose and screenplay. And yet again, different comic book writers work differently. And it's the same with film. There are some writers which will specify what every panel should look like. And then there are some writers that just give you dialogue and give the artist free reign to fill out that panel. Alan Moore, for example, who wrote Watchmen, is incredibly anal when it comes to his work because things in the background matter. And so everything down to the time on a clock on a mantelpiece will be listed down by him in the script for his graphic novel or comic book. And I think certain directors and writers also work that way. And you know the old adage of how a writer is nobody on a Hollywood set. And I think that's also partially true, because once you hand in the script, the studio, the directors, the producers kind of take over. But there are certain writers who have achieved, I guess, a certain standing in Hollywood and have a lot more say, if you will, on how their film turns out.
I don't know how far that is true.
I mean, those are very rare lah. I think it's usually the writers that work very closely, like for example, David Koepp, for example, who works very closely with Spielberg, where Spielberg has an idea and then David Koepp writes it.
Yeah, but David Koepp's not on set. I feel like that is fair. I think when you're a writer, you've spent 6 months writing the thing, and that's fine, that's great, excellent. But you kind of have to hand it off to the next part of the process. You know, it's just like an actor who does a scene and then they just have to hand over that bit to the editor to pick what they think works for the film. So I think all these comments about the artist's integrity and all that feels a little problematic, because at the end of the day, it's a collaborative effort.
More so than any other art form.
More so than any other damn art form, right? Because you wrote it for 6 months, you then have to hand it off to 300 people who then work on it for 6 months, who then have to hand it off to a team of 20 post-production people who then work on it for 2 months. And then it gets released. Sure, you as the writer may get invited to certain stages along the way, but the director had to decide that actually we don't need a thunderstorm, just a small rain will do, because where we're shooting in the bayous of Louisiana, we can't get the water trucks in. So, you know, there are these things that come up on a day-to-day, and yeah.
And I think it's an interesting game for you to play along with when the screenwriting category comes up at the Oscars as well, to see, after watching a movie, maybe not necessarily reading the screenplay, but after watching a movie, what you think deserves a screenplay award versus what actually gets picked, and whether you're on the right track.
The best screenplay category and the best film category don't actually just line up, right? Because the best screenplay may not necessarily win the best film category, because there were interpretations along the way that made the movie better or worse than the script. If you consider yourself a big fan of cinema, I think you should go out and try and read some of the scripts of your favorite films. They're not that hard to find. You don't have to sit there with the movie and then compare line by line, because they change lines on films. There's a shooting script that may be different from the printed script. But I don't know, I just think it's a fun thing to see how a film evolves from page to screen. Our next question's from @Kailash Laxman. So I took some time recently to watch the iconic Cinema Paradiso. I'll say it outright, this movie is incredible. The story is simple yet touching on subjects like nostalgia and relationships. It also really romanticizes cinema and watching movies, which I really resonated with. Not to mention the absolutely incredible score by Maestro Ennio Morricone, which is an instant classic. Have you guys seen it? What are your thoughts? What are other foreign films would you guys rate highly and say are a must-watch? I haven't seen it in a long time.
I've watched it quite recently, actually.
Oh, really?
It's one of my favorite movies of all time.
Oh,
so I tend to rewatch it quite often. I absolutely love Cinema Paradiso, and I have the score on vinyl. And yeah, it's one of my favorite movies. I mean, you're not wrong, Kailash. It is an incredible film. And for those exact reasons, I think the way it touches on nostalgia and relationships, and And it resonates so much with Malaysians. That sequence where he's just sitting there watching all of the cut, censored bits in movies, which he was not allowed to see as a child, kind of speaks to us on the same level, right? And I think that's part of the reason why the movie resonated so much as well. So, yes, absolutely. I think last week Kailash asked us about Tarantino. So I see that Kailash is like making his way through the must watch lists of movies and directors. Keep it up because you have to do it. I think if you are a fan of cinema, these are all on that checklist of things you must watch. But to pick up on your next question, what foreign films would you guys highly rate and recommend? I mean, there are lots. And you know what's funny, Bahe? I make the same mistake. We use the fucking Western categorization, right? They're the foreign films. Like, fucking
Oh
white
yes, of
people
course,
movies
of
are
course.
foreign
Yeah.
films for us. But actually,
Yeah.
we use Hollywood categorization and we consider everything outside of America and the UK to be a
Foreign
foreign
films,
film.
you have to watch Parasite. You know, you have to watch the original Battle Royale from Japan. No, come on. No, but no, you're right. It's this idea that is foreign because we're all Hollywood.
For the purposes of this answer, anything outside of Hollywood, but we don't have to consider Malaysian film. I'm assuming everyone's watched it, or at least attempting to watch all the P. Ramlee stuff, all the Yasmin stuff. You know, I mean, that's already out there, and you know what good Malaysian films there are, and that you should watch. But, like, just get the obvious ones out of the way, right? If you want a separation out of Iran, very, very important. City of God, Pan's Labyrinth,
Mm,
Seven Samurai, Rashomon, like you know all of these names. Parasite, like you mentioned, Bahe. So I'm going to list two movies that never usually come up. And these are two of my favorites. One is a Tamil movie with Rajinikanth called Talabadi.
you keep telling me about this.
I need you to watch it, but I don't know where you can watch it. Like there are shitty
Yeah.
versions on YouTube, but the problem with the damn Indian film industry is that they don't give a shit about 4K streaming or DVD or Blu-ray releases, and I can't find a good copy anywhere, and that's a problem. But Talabadi by Rajnikant, directed by Mani Ratnam, I believe is his best movie ever. You can fight me on that one, but I also think it's one of the best Tamil movies ever made. And it is absolutely brilliant. It is loosely based on the Mahabharata, but tells a contemporary story involving estranged brothers, cops and robbers, the mafia, etc., etc. The music is absolutely fantastic, and the film is just brilliant. Another one is a Japanese movie which doesn't get much play, but it's called Good Morning or Ohio, and it's by Ozu.
Mm.
Yasujiro Ozu is one of the greatest Japanese filmmakers of all time. And I think, Kailash, if you're making your way through lists of directors and films, just go watch all of Ozu's movies. Key films in cinema. But Ohio is a 1959 movie, and I think it's absolutely great. It is just one of those slice of life type films, but told through the perspective of two young boys. And essentially, it is just about Japan after the war. And it's not a post-war Japan being demolished recovery type story, but you know, it's
Right.
1959. And so Japan being normal-ish once again. And what is life like after this tremendous traumatic event? It's what happens at the local women's club. And the boys love the neighbor's house because it's the only place they can watch sumo wrestling because they have a television. And it's little beautiful stories like this. There is a Studio Ghibli movie called By Neighbors the Yamadas, which is not by Miyazaki, but it's a Ghibli film. And yet again, it's another one of those types of quiet family stories that tell you a bit about what life is like in Japan. And it's just beautifully made, full of all of these minute observations on life that really, really resonate. And I don't think it gets much play, but it was one of the very first Criterion DVDs that I bought, like in the early mid 2000s. Just an amazing film. So it's called Ohio or Good Morning. Those are the two that I think people never talk about. Like, people talk about all of the other stuff, the Seven Samurai and the Rashomon and the Parasite and Pan's Labyrinth and Old Boy and all of that stuff, right? It's like on every list on the internet.
I've got two, but I realized that one of them isn't really a foreign film.
Oh, really?
I was going to say The Fall by Tarsum Singh, only because I'm a big fan of that movie, but it's not foreign. It is independent, I think is what it was.
It's
So,
independent, but it's made by someone with Singh in his name, so let's call it foreign lah.
but it's not foreign.
I know it isn't.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm going to take that out. But I think people should watch The Fall by Tarsum Singh. But the one I'm going to recommend is, I will say, one of the hardest movies to find. It is Night Watch from 2004.
Oh, the Russian one.
Yeah, Timur Bekmambetov's first feature film or second feature film.
You know, before he started leaning into AI shit.
Yes, before he found AI. The reason I want to bring this up is because I will say it is a better than fine action movie. Also because it was made for like $4.2 million. But the sort of VFX, the CGI of it is very good. However, all of that's not important. The reason I bring it up is because Night Watch is probably the only film I've seen that has what is called dynamic subtitling. Have you heard of dynamic subtitling, Omar?
No.
Okay, so dynamic subtitling is when the subtitles pop up on screen like visual graphics. So when you're talking about the blood moon turning red, the blood moon will be in normal white text, but then it will turn red as he says red.
Right.
So the subtitles are not just at the bottom, they pop up like almost like dialogue boxes and they react. So when they say he's bleeding, the words will start to bleed and all of that stuff. It showed up, I think, on one run of a Blu-ray release and never since.
Oh, wow.
It is impossible to find. I've been scouring Reddit, eBay, most torrent sites. You can't find it.
Oh, wow.
The reason I saw it is because I saw it on HBO on Astro many, many years ago. For some reason, they had the dynamic subtitling version.
That is cool.
It is really cool. Like, I can't find clips on it on YouTube. I thought I was crazy for the longest time, and then I found Reddit, and yes,
It does exist.
it exists.
It wasn't a dream.
It wasn't a fever dream. Yeah. But it's quite cool because the film is pretty good. Like, the story works. It's an urban fantasy supernatural thriller film. It's about sort of like vampires trying to take over the world. People may know of Daywatch, and I think there was a third one. There's a trilogy. The third one was not very good. The second one was okay. The first one was the best. For Russia to be doing these kinds of like action film and it not be janky, for me, the dynamic subtitling sort of just blew my mind and forever haunts me.
Well, we hope that helps, Kailash Laxman. But yes, it's definitely worth going through those online lists as well. I know we said the obvious movies are out there, but if you haven't seen the obvious movies, there's a reason why they're the obvious movies. They're actually genuinely very, very good.
There's nothing wrong with doing the IMDb, 25 movies to watch before you die and then doing the 50 movies. It's fine. You're right. They're obvious and they're popular because they are good.
At Normind asks, now that Iron Lung is coming to Malaysian cinemas, have you both seen the film? And if so, what do you think of it and the impact it has on future indie film releases? We haven't seen the movie yet. We're going to watch it next week. I believe it's out next Thursday, which is the 26th of February, which is very exciting because I didn't think it was going to come to Malaysia. Now, for those of you who don't know, Iron Lung is a movie that was made on a budget of $3 million by the very popular YouTuber Markiplier, and it has become something of a phenomenon. And he refused to take the traditional studio route or financing route. He did everything himself. And I mean, shoot, direct, edit. He stars in it. He sold it to cinemas using private contracts between him and the cinemas. It is amazing because he mobilized his 30 or 40 million YouTube fan base and made this movie something. And it is an incredible story. And I genuinely thought it's not going to go outside of the US or the UK, but there was so much momentum that Encore Films, a big distributor in Asia, picked up the rights. And so it's going to be released in Southeast Asia and I think Korea and Japan as well. And it's an amazing story. It's really, really cool. However, I will say this, Bhai. I am under no illusion that this is going to change anything with regards to indie film releases, because I think Markiplier is an outlier.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Completely.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I heard there is a great interview with him on The Town with Matt Bellany, and he talks about his entire process and how he made this thing happen. And just incredible work. But I don't see it happening for anyone else.
It only works for Markiplier, who's got 40 million subscribers on YouTube.
But here's the thing, dude. There are other people, influencers, popular YouTubers, etc., who have tried to do something similar, and it's impossible to mobilize their fan base in such a way. I think Markiplier is unique because his fan base is unique. Like, I think there are other people with 40 million fans who can't mobilize a fan base. So, for example, I think there are people with hundreds of millions of fans. I think Kim Kardashian can write and direct the movie, and it's not going to make this kind of money.
I agree, but I think the difference is Kim Kardashian can release makeup and make billions of dollars. Markiplier can't release makeup. So it's knowing your brand, right?
Exactly.
Markiplier knows his brand can do this. I don't think if Mr. Beast was to produce a film, he'll make money.
Agreed.
You know, just like how 3 years ago, when one of the Pauls, they did Prime, the drink, and it was impossible to get. People were stocking it and reselling it and making bank. But now it's on the discount shelves. So my point is, you have to know who your audience is, right? Mr. Beast knows his audience wants to watch a Mr. Beast style show. Yes, so they go on Amazon, they make it bigger. I don't know about better, but they make it more expensive.
I think Mr. Beast's audience are too used to getting things from him.
Yeah.
So they want free money. They want free things.
Yeah.
They may not necessarily spend their own money to support whatever he's doing. And that's what happened with Iron Lung. Like, Markiplier's fans would call cinemas and be like, why aren't you bringing this movie in? He mobilized it on a ground level.
I think the difference is Markiplier as a YouTube channel is very personable. He's constantly talking to his audience. He isn't presenting things, right? Like Mr. Beast is presenting a show. You know, if you're the last person holding the helicopter, you win the helicopter. That feels like just presenting entertainment. Whereas Markiplier is always, yeah, he's playing games and stuff, but he's also doing these vlog style videos. So they become, or rather he becomes almost like a friend of their followers, right? So I think that kind of brand association or channel association or KOL association helps what he then wants to do, because he's taken a video game that he and his audience love and bought the rights to it himself and then gone out and made the film himself. So if at any point he had gone to Netflix and bought the film rights to the game with Netflix money, I think people would not be reacting so strongly to it. I think it's because of the bootstrap nature of the endeavor. I think that's kind of what got people going.
And it's the same with anything, right? The only reason this was so successful was because tickets started selling. And so the problem with a lot of indie film releases is that most people don't necessarily want to watch it or buy tickets for it or go out on the first weekend until they find out it's been nominated for like lots of awards or good word of mouth, etc. And a problem with that also has to do with the kind of marketing that takes place with indie film releases. Markiplier did all of the marketing himself.
That argument you just made, I would replace indie with the word local film. You know, Bada, a film we both love incredibly. Barely anybody I know watched it in the cinema.
Now all you fuckers will watch it because it's on
now
Netflix.
All you fuckers will watch it on Netflix, right? Like now everybody's making lists of, oh, this movie is so good. This is great. Number one. Fuck you lah. Go watch it in the cinema, bitch. Kan batal puasa. No, but I think Normine has got you're a very hopeful young person, I suspect. I don't think this means anything to anybody else other than Markiplier.
From what I hear, the movie isn't terrible. It's quite interesting. And so I'm curious to watch it and find out what he's done. But I think what this does is that it makes life easier for Markiplier when he wants to do his next movie.
Mm.
And I think if he's caught the bug and he does want to make more film, it'll be interesting to see how he hones his craft and what he decides to do next with regards to distribution and production, and whether he goes down the same route, whether he spends all of his own money and completely bypasses this entrenched system of distribution and exhibition, which is this behemoth lot, and everyone is kind of prey to it, right? Markiplier is an outlier, 40 million fans on YouTube, readily mobilized. He had a very, very interesting marketing strategy, which you can see for yourself. Just go to his YouTube page and watch all of the things he's done. And he was very, very clever in that he went, you know what? It's a $3 million movie. All I need to do is mobilize these people who've been following me for years and years and years and get them excited to watch this movie. It kind of spread from there because there was curiosity in the industry and everybody wanted to find out, what is this movie about? What has he done? Who is this guy? Whether or not you were a Markiplier fan. So I think all of that's just very, very cool. Like, hats off to the guy. He is incredible.
At Rabbit Hop asks, what do you think is the impact if the Epstein files are released in its fullest, redacted all victims' names, of course? And what do you think about the second Trump administration so far?
So this question kind of ties into the next question by Travesty, who goes, among the both of you, do you prefer entertainers who are just doing their job to entertain, or the ones that become activists for a cause? I mean, the reason I included this question is because I think the release of the Epstein files have had a tremendous impact on Hollywood and the music industry, maybe not so much the sports industry. So a big revelation from last week / this week is the talent agency run by Casey Wasserman. I think Billie Eilish had dropped him a while ago as a talent agent, not because of Epstein, but because of something else. But Chappell Roan came out and dropped him as an agent because of his name showing up in the Epstein files. It wasn't because he was engaged in underage sex, but because he was engaged in an illicit affair with Ghislaine Maxwell, and there were some pretty sordid emails. I don't know if they're actually having an affair or just writing sordid emails to one another. I haven't actually looked at it. But since then, he has sold or is looking to sell his agency. He also covers a lot of sports, as in he's the agent for a lot of major sporting figures and other music figures. And he's also the chairman of the LA 2028 Olympics Committee, who have defended him and are keeping him on as the chairman. And I think all of this is quite interesting because it feels like sports doesn't really give a shit as much about the Epstein stuff because there's a lot of shit that goes on in sport. And they're just like, yeah, whatever. But artists and actors tend to have very different moral compasses when it comes to things like this. And it's the same with the LA 28 committee, right? Because the LA Olympics 2028 committee is full of big, rich, influential people who I'm sure are involved in some shitty things on the side. So they're just like, yeah, okay, whatever. We've got some lawyers on board. They'll help us. But I think it all ties in because it feels from what we've seen that everyone is on the fucking Epstein list. And I'm sure there are going to be some of your favorite celebrities on the Epstein list. And I think that's going to affect how you view their movies or their TV shows, or whether you choose to view their movies or TV shows or listen to their music or vote for them, etc., etc. I don't know the answer to the question of what the impact will be because I'm still amazed that the only person who has been arrested is Prince Andrew. Which, Bahe, in itself, is probably being underplayed at this point because I think that's the biggest news this week. The last time a member of the royal family got arrested was in the 16 fucking hundreds. It was Charles the First, and then he was beheaded. So this is massive news, right? But he's the only one who's been arrested. And I think it's nuts. I think it's nuts that all of these names are out there, and some of them are really implicated in those emails, and yet nothing has happened. So, like, I don't know if what they say is true. Maybe having all the money and power in the world makes you immune to this sort of prosecution. Who knows? But we're watching to see how it plays out. As for Travisty's question, which I think all of it ties back to, where do you stand by with regards to entertainers who are also activists? Because I think my view has changed over time as I have gotten older.
I like that they have an opinion. I don't care that I know it. You know what I mean? Like I appreciate that Mark Ruffalo is constantly tweeting about native rights and land rights and environmental rights and
Gaza.
and all, like, good for you, man. Like, using your voice. I get like a little sort of warm huggies when I see people on the red carpet with the
watermelon pins,
but also the Be Good pins, the kafaya. I like all that's great, but I don't know if it makes me like them any more or any less.
But here's the thing, Bahe. You and I are pretty informed about these things. As in, we make it a point to read up about all of this stuff, and we want to know what happens in the world. So I think it's important because I think they speak to an audience who may be quite disconnected from this stuff. And I think using their voice to raise that awareness is crucial. Like, people laugh and joke about Bono and U2, for example. But I think what Project Red did to raise awareness about AIDS is just amazing. I think it is one of the most important things. Like, I was in my formative years, I was in my late teens, early 20s when the whole Project Red thing came up. And I was a fan of U2 and a fan of the band and all of that stuff, but I knew nothing about AIDS. At that age, you don't give a shit, right? You're busy playing video games and chasing girls and doing all kinds of stuff. And you don't care about what's happening in the world. And I think that gave me an awareness about AIDS in Africa and what was going on and how the world was doing nothing at the time. And I think if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have known as much or wouldn't have cared as much. And I think that's the role they play. Now, do I prefer them? I think, yeah, in that I find it very difficult to watch stuff now with people who are super pro-Israel and anti-Gaza. Because in my head, I'm just like, are you an idiot? Like, are you stupid? Like, what's going on? Like, do you not recognize a genocide when you see one? Because for me, it kind of reflects their level of intellect and humanity as well. And I'm just like, then you're a fucking asshole. Like, children are dying and you don't give a fuck. Like, that is a real problem.
I think the difference is also, I don't demand people who have not come up to say anything to say something. I think
I'm totally on board with you for that.
I don't know if you want to keep neutrality. I don't want to speak on behalf of people. But if you haven't said anything, that is fine. You are not automatically on one side or the other of that flag for me.
I don't think that celebrities or artists need to have a concrete, well thought out opinion on every single crisis that is happening in the world. I don't think it's possible. I think everyone picks their fights and their battles. And let me tell you, when we were journalists in the past, we would get pitched these ideas because everyone would want journalistic coverage for everything. And a lot of the time you can't. You don't have the time, you don't have the space, whether you're writing in a newspaper or on radio or on television. And everyone kind of picks their battles and their fights, right? And their causes. And no, I don't think everyone needs to have an opinion on everything. However, I do disagree on one point, which is, I think when you have a massive following and something massive is happening in the world, then I think your relationship with those fans is almost dependent on whether or not you have an opinion on it. So, for example, back in the day, way back in the day, Michael Jordan stayed out of politics, right? And he stayed out of politics because he said Republicans buy shoes too.
Yeah.
And I think what was interesting about that was it was a different political sphere. I think Republicans and Democrats were still civil to one another. One side wasn't supporting state-sanctioned murder. I think that's the difference. And I think the same applies to Taylor Swift and Beyonce with regards to Gaza, with regards to ICE, with regards to everything that's happening in America, because they have remained incredibly silent. Which is worse when you are a fucking billionaire rolling around in your money. And I think that's problematic, that they've remained silent, especially those two individuals, because they've been activists in the past. And not even in the distant past, in the recent past, whether it's George Floyd or whether it's Taylor Swift asking people to vote for a certain candidate. And I think all of that is in recent memory. And so what it feels like now is that you're just trying to protect your money and your brand with neutrality. That I feel is problematic. Like if you've always kept silent, it's a different story. Or if you've always spoken out, like if you've been like fucking Bob Dylan or Bruce Springsteen and written a song for every single issue, then people expect it from you. But I think it's the flip-flopping that causes issues. And I think that really affects how I see them as artists or how I behave as a fan towards their work. Like Emmanuel Shrieky showed up in The Lincoln Lawyer and I was just like, ugh, Zionist. I loved her in Entourage. And then now I see her Instagram and I'm just like, ugh.
I think to not put a fine point on it, like I don't value celebrity personality as a judge of anything, right? Like I don't follow any famous people on my Instagram. Like I follow sports teams, but I don't follow footballers because the team is more important than the footballer, right? So when Variety has a photo of a celebrity on the red carpet and they are showing things that I'm aligned to, I'm like, oh, that's nice. I'm not going to go and like their thing. I'm not going to go watch their movie. Like, I like keeping my worlds in that sense separate. Like, I know that they have opinions and I appreciate that. And sure, if you're a Zionist, then I may or may not watch your movie, but I really don't care what you guys do. I think that's the thing. So on some level, I say, yes, I like entertainers who just do their job to entertain, but I'm okay with them having opinions because I don't interact with their opinions.
I mean, it's the same way with any kind of celebrity advertising, right? I'm not going to buy Nespresso because I like George Clooney. I have my own taste.
I'm not putting my money into crypto because Matt Damon told me
Exactly.
You know, it's like, yeah.
But I think for me, it's a question of it's a question of how I judge their humanity, right?
Yeah.
I think if you are out there defending the murder of good or supporting something that is just horrible, then I feel that it's a reflection of your own humanity. And in that sense, I'm like, you know what? You don't need my money. You don't need my support. I don't go out of my way to support the people who are aligned with my worldview, but at the same time, I will actively disengage from the people who feel like they're horrible human beings. Like, I'm not going to go to Tyra Banks' fucking ice cream shop. That's for sure.
I mean, I don't think I was ever going to go to Tyra Banks' ice cream shop, but like
That's true. That's true. I wasn't planning on it, but I'm just saying right now, I'm just like, Jesus.
If I happened to be there on holiday and then I was walking down the street and I saw, oh, isn't that Tyra Banks' ice cream shop? And then I walk up and I see the prices. If it's cheap, then maybe I'll buy one just to try. But like, I agree with you. I think it doesn't change me, but I will probably actively disengage, which I'm already actively disengaged with everything anyway. But I think if you are a Zionist supporter, then I think I will disengage with you even more.
I think that's where we stand on that.
Yeah. I think the second Trump administration's been a car crash, but That's always fun to watch.
It is, especially from the outside. Makes me feel really good about Malaysia.
I wouldn't go so far as to say that. Makes me feel really good that I'm not American.
It's just Schadenfreude. Misery loves company, right? Here we have MACC behaving like the mafia, and over there they have ICE behaving like the mafia, right?
Yeah. I will say I will be watching the midterms very closely.
Oh, absolutely.
It's going to be fun to watch.
It is. And if you haven't already, just follow the drama that's going on between CBS, Stephen Colbert, and the FCC at the moment. It is hilarious and also one of the most Malaysian things ever.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for all of your questions. We hope we have answered them to your satisfaction. Keep them coming in. You know how to reach out. We're on Instagram at GogglerMY. You can also email us questions, podcast@goggler.my, or send us a WhatsApp on the Goggler hotline, 012-524-5208. Thank you so much for listening. This is Ask Us Anything on the Goggler Podcast.